Yeah.
1 minute, we'll go live.
Let's just go.
Yeah.
All right, Greg, what questions do we have today?
So let's just start off with the first one I come to. I'm reading questions now. These are from the Body Language membership site. We're not on the YouTube site looking. Here's a good one. Hi, Greg and Scott. My question to you. Is anyone interested in analyzing a David Wilcock video on aliens and UFOs, either here with the two of you or behavior panel? Yeah, I think the behavior panel, we're going to do some UFO videos. We'll get back to some of those. We've just been off of them for a while because true crime, so many people write us about true crime or the government or other liars. So we usually go with those. But yeah, we'll go back to some UFOs. And guys, if you want us to do some extended time here about UFOs or about that kind of thing, sure, we can pull a video here and talk about it. And we can put up a couple. I think I got a couple, Scott, I'd like to post out in discussion area so we can have people bat it around and say what they see. That way we get you guys engaged in dissecting instead of always being us doing it. Let's let you do it and tell you what we see after. Much like we just did with Lee Harvey Oswald. I think there's a lot of minor things that you'll miss if you don't have time to just roll over and over and over it. Yeah. So, Scott, what do you think? UFOs?
Yeah, I think that's great. Are you talking about taking little sections of stuff and saying, what are you seeing here? That's a pretty good idea.
Well, people have been now taking classes. We're putting some new stuff up this week. I've been working on this this energy direction and focus piece. We're going to do some other things this week and stand up a couple of new classes for you. And I'd love to see what's working, what's sticking, what is helping and what isn't. So what we'll start doing, not what we may start doing, is we'll put up in the discussion area a video that's a couple of minutes and let everybody discuss it, and then we'll weigh in. If that sounds like a good chance for you guys, then I think it is something we could do pretty easily. Scott, thoughts?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
So it could be UFOs. It could be any topic you guys want, but UFOs, take right off. I like
the one-on-ones we do, though, man. Those are blast. I had like 4 people in here.
And I haven't had much time recently, so looking forward to doing that, guys. We'll do.
I just go in and say, hey, first 5 people on, first 4 people in. Well, let's talk for half an hour.
Let's just randomly do that a few times next week. So whenever folks are available, we'll do a few of those, and you can.
We'll do it today, later.
Okay,
maybe tonight.
I got some time. Let's try some of that. Sadie says you look great, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, Becky asks, what type of body language would a predator look for or avoid if going to take a purse or grab a random person and throw them in their van, etc.? What type of body language should I look for in order to avoid this type of predator? Scott, you want to start with previolence, and then we can talk about weakness and prey.
Well, the first, so you want me to go with what the person's going to look like? Start
with, previolence. Yep.
Okay. Well, what you're going to be looking for is the person who is standing around, and if they're after you, if you've been targeted, then they'll look at you. Obviously, that's what's going to happen. So, and then you'll see them get a little bit brazen. They'll pretend like obviously they don't see you or they don't know what's going on as they come up to you, but then they'll make a red or a beeline for you, and that's when they start coming. What you want to do is when I handle the victim part better, because Greg, you're going to be able to break down the predatorial stuff more. It'll be easier to understand.
Go ahead. Yep.
So as a victim, to keep from being a victim, what the predator is looking for is someone who's not paying attention. You're looking at your phone. You're just walking around looking down at the ground. You want to be up looking around at everything. If you see somebody looking at you, you look right back at them, because that puts them on notice. Like, because they're counting on you not remembering them and not being ready. Surprise is always the big deal when you're attacking someone or you're the predator. So make sure you're paying attention. Make sure your head is up. It's so hard these days not to be walking around looking at your phone, even in crowds. You feel safer in a crowd, but you're not. A lot of pickpockets they're just making a fortune now, like in New Orleans and all that, and in Memphis as well, because people aren't paying attention. They're totally absorbed in their phone. It's easy for me to go, don't look at your phone because this, that. But that's what's happening. So to keep from being a victim, pay attention to what's going on all around you. Just be aware. Don't be afraid. Just be aware of what's happening. If you see somebody that you think's looking at you or targeting you, just keep looking at them.
And most pickpockets, most people are going to take something from you are going to use redirect. They're going to do something that makes you think one thing occurs while they're doing another. It's a classic. You've seen it a million times. Somebody bumps into you, another guy grabs your wallet. I go back to a friend who just, oddly enough, passed from COVID not long ago. But we were in New York 25 years ago hanging out, old friend. We're wandering around, And this guy walks up to me and puts his hand on me, and I kind of go off and, what are you doing? Yell at him. And later she told me, you kind of crazy, you belong here. But I was like, did you see the guy in the window? Because the guy who was touching me was not the guy. The other guy coming up behind me was the guy. So you got to pay attention for redirects. People who are doing redirects, you should be suspicious of always. They come up to you and start talking about random topic X. Unless they're mentally ill, and then you might want to get away from them anyway. But unless they're mentally ill, that random topic X is an odd thing. Not talking about the cost of gas or that kind of thing, but this guy was saying, what do you think of these police officers who did X or Y? Well, what the hell? This is 11 o'clock at night, and I'm on the street, and you're going to talk to me about police officers doing something? So that redirect is a big piece of what I would look for. The other one, Scott brings it up all the time, that when people are about to do something wrong, they shrink. You see it in shoplifting videos and all that. Unless they're really bold, most people are going to turtle. They're going to draw in the target before they go in to do something. The other one to remember is fight or flight will give you cues that somebody is preparing to do something. So respiration, if you're close enough, respiration increase, thumbs rolling in, all of those things that happen to us, all the fight or flight cues, pale-faced, thin-lipped, all that stuff occurs because their blood's going to their limbs for action. Hopefully that helps. And pretty simple.
You just described me. Pale.
Are you fight or flight or just pale?
We can't get this light thing happening in here.
Do you have blood in your limbs at the moment?
Yeah, probably. It's been one of those days. All
right. So let's see. What else do we have? So hopefully, Becky, that helps you. What would be the 5 most important? This is from Margaret. What would be the 5 most important red flags for young women or men to look for in someone's behavior so they might avoid a toxic or abusive relationship? Scott, you want to start?
Oh, yeah. There's so much when you start looking at that. First thing, when you first get in with them, everything's going to be great. They're going to be so nice to you. It's unbelievable. You're going to feel like this is the one. That's it. I found him. I found her. And things will go really, really great. Just wonderfully well for a long time. For 6 months, maybe even 8 months, maybe a year. Then the next thing you know, bang, it's over, and they turn on you. So what you want to look for is somebody being overly nice at the top, way nice, but oddly nice, not just like, hey, look what I brought you. When you first start courting someone, then you bring them stuff, and you want to do stuff for them, you do that. But it's the over-the-top thing just lasts way too long. Because after a while, that's going to die down. You're going to be okay with them. They're going to feel secure with you and all that, but it just doesn't stop. That's when after a while, they turn on you. So you really got to pay attention to that. That's one of the most important things to pay attention to. Not that because somebody's being nice to you, look out. That's fine. But when it's too much and things are going too fast. I know a girl who got too fast, who accidentally married somebody who just came on strong and fast. And she was totally open, like, yeah, this is wonderful. And the guy turned out being a really, 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 really bad guy. I talk about him on here sometimes. So, so if it's going too fast and they're really too nice and they're wanting to do too much and they're wanting to get too involved with your family and things like that, or if they start separating you from your family in a way, it's sometimes they'll try to get in and get in with your parents and be really cool with them. So when they turn on you, the parents will love them and you'll feel bad about telling the parents this person is being mean. So there's all kinds of psychological ploys that they use when they do that. And they really don't set out to do that, but that's the way they see it as a predator. That's why they start doing that, as they start being nice to everyone around you, and then they close you off. And then so if you say this person's bad, you're afraid everybody else is going to think you're crazy. I love that guy, or I love that girl. Are you kidding me? She's wonderful. She's saying all this stuff. And then they're not nice. So,
when I was young, before I had words to put to this, I would have called this glossy. And I meant quite literally somebody looked like a glossy 8x10, meaning there's no imperfection. Everything's perfect. They move fast, and there's no imperfection anywhere. That means they're on their best behavior. They're settling. And if all of us sell to some degree when we're enamored with somebody, and we are initially in those courting stages of whatever kind of relationship it is. But people that move too fast and overwhelmingly plug into everything you possibly need make me concerned, because what happens is, even if they're well-intended, they burn through people because they are so quickly absorbing you that, okay, well, now I'm done with that. But usually it's that glossy look where everything's perfect. There's never a mistake. There's never anything wrong. There's nothing about them that you don't think, And the other one is, my number one go-to is, if you feel really good in the presence of a person and then when they leave, you don't feel good, you should ask yourself why. Because we are good at picking up on danger, on threats. Not as good as we should be, but we certainly have an inborn, Gavin de Becker's gift of fear. We all have this ability to sense that something's not right. If you feel like something is perfect until the person leaves, and then you're like, why the hell do I like this person so much? Start looking. Try to figure out why. That's my best tool.
Yeah. And you're watching, if you're on YouTube, you're watching the live Q&A from Body Language Membership. And if you will be a part of Body Language Membership, just go to bodylanguagemembership.com and you can join there. And we have a course that's already in there, a little mini course. So if you're not really in deep in body language yet, if you're first learning about it, you can go through it and this little course, and you'll get an idea of the basics of what we talk about and how we talk, not just here, but on the behavior panel and anywhere else you'll see us. There are all kinds of things in there. We do these live Q&As. We try to do them as often as we can. And inside the membership, we'll go in and talk to whoever shows up, and we say, hey, come in, we'll talk for 30 minutes. So we sort of do those as surprise things in there. We've got
we'll be doing training. Some of those later today and probably next week as well. Guys, we'll get back to some of that through the holidays. Of course, we're busy as everybody else trying to visit family and spend time with family. And so, yeah, we're back to a little more time, and we'll be doing a whole lot of that. And I'm sure you guys were trying to spend time with your families and that as well.
We also have the Training Academy in there, which is we have different. We have a lesson. Try to have one new lesson every month, so you learn a whole lot in there. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I was just about to ask. Jim says, would any of your books help someone with social anxiety? It's my opinion that any of this you learn will help you with social anxiety, because you'll start to realize that everybody has insecurity. And where that insecurity shows up is difficult for most of us because we're too busy focused, and especially if you have social anxiety, you're too busy focusing on self. But if you learn to just turn all that outward and pay attention, it's amazing what you'll see in other people. And people are so caught up in what they're working on, they often don't even notice whatever it is about you that you're worried about. So start paying attention. Any book, any one of the books, I could pick 20 from the shelves. I have a whole shelf, the very top back shelf back there, that's written by friends, written by people I know. And all of those books, I probably should just go lay them out and take a picture. All those books, each of them has something. I think it's a really good question. Scott, you have a suggestion for a specific book or anything different?
No, not really. I mean, they're all, depending on who you get, they're all great as long as it's a person who's valid and is actually studied in their field. How's that sound?
Yeah. Brian asked a question. Greg, I've become good friends with Jim Pyle via phone calls. We talk many times a week. It seems like every time he says something, it comes out in wisdom. Yeah, Jim's a smart guy. One of the smartest guys I know. And, just Jim's not on here, but just to say, Jim's one of the smartest people I know. Not to mention he's a good guy. Any interesting story you can tell me about him, maybe humorous. I'll give you a funny one that is neither one of us. A long, long time ago when I was a young interrogator, we were driving, I forget exactly why, but we were driving across Las Cruces, New Mexico, headed out that way. And Jim had not filled his tank with fuel, and it's the middle of the night. And we were getting that ding, 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 you're going to run out of fuel. And if you've driven between Las Cruces and Bisbee, there's not much out there. So Jim asked me to go and hitchhike. Well, this is right and get fuel. If you look at me and you look at Rutger Hauer, I'm not a good hitchhiker candidate, because in that time, there's a very famous movie called The Hitcher, where Rutger Hauer was a murderer on the road. So here we are on the side of the road trying to find our way to get some fuel looking like this. That's probably the funniest story. I've got a lot of other funny stories, but inappropriate. We ended up getting fuel and not running out before it was all over. But yeah,
you can imagine so me military
on the side of the road in the middle of the night. Yeah,
fuel.
Well, yeah, we're
gas.
We're military. We're military guys. Well, I drive a truck. Diesel, so it is fuel.
So do you go to the fueling station? Does Dina go, we need some fuel?
I say I need fuel.
That's so weird. That's so odd.
That might not have been that funny to you, but it was pretty damn funny at the time, him trying to get me to hitchhike for fuel. Aaron Chase asked the question, so thanks so much for this Q&A. Please explain what might be happening when someone switches between present and past tense when recounting a past event, especially when a crime has been committed. You want to take that one, Scott?
Why don't you go ahead and do it? I've got to fix a small problem down here.
Okay. Well, and Scott's traveling, so he's not in his usual studio. As you can see, he's in his secondary backup. Yeah. So when a person's shifting gears, often it's nothing more than being caught up in the moment, trying to give you what you need. And as they're thinking back to the case, they're going to give you details in present tense. Usually people switch tenses. The problem with tense or with any speech pattern, I'm very cautious with it, because there are people who don't know the difference in tense. They just switch gears constantly. It's a speech pattern. Sometimes it's an education thing. Sometimes it's a local thing. We did Lee Harvey Oswald yesterday, and somebody said, why does he say axe? New Orleans. Simple. You know, it's not that he was doing anything out of the ordinary. It was just cultural, something in places he lived, that was a fairly normal speech pattern. Some people shift gears. So I'm cautious, Aaron, by using that a lot. You'll notice I don't use it as much. If I hear something that is one-off, then it means something. But if I hear them switching gears between tenses, it's actually not really uncommon in the part of the country I'm from in South Georgia and down through there. When I go visit family, I hear people shifting tense constantly. So I hope that helps, but it can mean that they're reliving a situation, that they are being more cautious about how they deliver the message, and that's a reason that we pay attention to it.
One of my favorite things to listen to is somebody telling a ghost story where they saw a ghost, or they saw this or that, or something creepy happen, and what they'll say is, the ones that are adding to it or making it up quite often, they'll say, well, what happened? Okay, I walked into whatever this was. Then you walk down this thing and you look over and you see, so they're putting that person, they're trying to think of that person seeing it as they tell the story instead of themselves. So they're trying to build a story so it makes it look good to that person, but they're forgetting, they're saying, you will see. And then you did this. Not all the time, but quite often that's what I've found happens.
But guys, this is all the more reason it's important to get a baseline, because some people just talk that way. Other people, it means something. If a person normally speaks one would, and then they go to you means something. If they always say you, it means nothing. So that's all the more reason we have to work at getting a baseline. And baseline comes from casual conversation, much better than from trying to dig in. If you'll notice, when we talked about Oswald this week on the behavior panel, we went and watched another video, the only other existing video of him, to find out what does he normally do, and then come back and look at it. Candace asked, during the live, could you elaborate on micro expressions? There's something I have trouble with. Also, I start law school, if all goes well, next year. Congratulations. And we'd love to hear any stories you guys have about working with criminal defense attorneys, clients in court, helping solve cases, and testifying as witnesses. Does that happen often? Some of that does, some of it doesn't. The testifying, not as much. Have you testified as an expert witness before? Anything law-related is exciting to me. I can't wait to use my knowledge to gain experience that will help me in my law career. Thank you guys for going live. Stay well, and we'll see you at noon. I'll give you a good law school story. I did 1 year of law school before I decided it was not for me. I was in the Army and thought, what the hell, I'll try it. My degree was getting a little aged, and I went to Rutgers Law. And when we were doing deposition in I believe it was in process, it was in Civ Pro, we're doing deposition, I remember raising my hand and saying to the professor, those are crappy questions. And I remember him looking at me and thinking, oh yeah, here's some rock star who's going to tell me about questioning. And I taught questioning for 10 minutes. And when it was over, he said, well, you are a better questioner than I am. And it was pretty funny. He wrote a little piece in my first book I ever wrote. So law school is a great thing for you to apply this, because it's people. And anytime you're dealing with people, all of these skills you're learning, whether it's questioning, whether it's baselining, whether it's eye movement, body language, any of this stuff matters, because at the end of the day, you're in the ultimate people business. Scott, you want to add to that? Talk about a little bit about
you asked about
witnessing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. She asked about micro expressions,
Yep.
and when I teach it, or when I go speak at Vanderbilt and teach classes there, then one of the main things I talk about is, as you're in deposition, when someone's talking, they'll be saying one thing, obviously, and they'll be dressing it up so it sounds better for them. It's the same. They got from point A to point B, but what happened between point A and point B is what you're looking for. So quite often you'll see, and micro expressions are what we call leaking emotion. So you can't see me do it, but if you watch over here, I'll hit this real quick, and you'll see what I did just then, really, really, really quick, but smaller. So when you see these things like that, they happen very quickly. That gives you a pretty good idea of what that person is thinking or how they're feeling about that situation. Sometimes I can't do the grief muscle, but sometimes as someone speaks, you'll see a really quick grief muscle. I can't do it, but you'll see it like it's an upside down horseshoe right there. Yeah, Greg's pretty good at doing it. Damn. And so it'll show up fairly quickly. Or you'll see like this, a little contempt when one side of the mouth goes up. It's the only asymmetric expression is contempt or disdain. So you'll see that happen as they talk to you. That's kind of big. I'm trying to make it really small as I do it. But those are the things you're looking for. And so in micro expressions, it doesn't mean for sure that's the road they're going down, but it gives you a pretty good idea of how they're feeling about things. Another thing you'll look for is when they're saying no, but their head barely shakes yes. They say, I'm telling you, did you do so-and-so? No. It's not when they're affirming something. I never went to the store to do that. That's different than saying, I never went to the store to do that. Both of those can be saying they didn't do that. You can believe that. But when you ask a specific yes or no question and they go, yes, even if it's really little like that, very subtle, look for those and then start asking questions around those. Nothing in body language is an absolute, which means just because they do that doesn't mean they're being deceptive or telling the truth or whatever. So you have to know what questions to ask around those. So be ready to ask more questions around those. A guy to watch is this guy named Robert Barnes. He's good at that. Good Lord, he's good at that. Viva and Barnes, they have a YouTube show. Watch that. Both of them brilliant attorneys, brilliant. And sometimes they'll talk about those things. They go in. Eric Hunley's got a channel, Unstructured, and he talks about, he always has body language people on and lawyers, and he focuses on those types of things. So check his stuff out as well. And all those people are in the membership, I believe.
Yeah, and I'll also add to this. What Scott's talking about with micro expressions is when those are asymmetric primarily, and you're saying one thing and your body's saying another. There's a lot of ways people do that. Listen for word pattern changes. Listen for a person to be saying one thing, but their body's saying another. It can be, forget for a minute the micro expressions, a person gesturing or illustrating way out here, out of their frame of reference. That's not normal. We look for what's normal for the person. They're talking, then their hands go out here. Anything that you're looking at, when you're talking to a person, people are usually, when they're trying to communicate, they're opening a channel with you, and they're trying to give you that undivided attention. If they're talking over here with their hands and you're over here, something is odd. We just look for deviations, look for differences. And the last one I'll leave you with is, if you look at my face, you can see all the etching because I'm kind of rubber-faced and use my face a lot when I talk. So it leaves behind a lot of the lines, especially as people age. So I always say, your mama was right, your face is going to freeze that way. But all these lines we get, they're left behind because we use those muscles to communicate. When a person doesn't use those muscles and they have all those lines, I'm always suspicious of that as well. Hopefully that helps you. But the court thing, anything you do with people is going to help you in terms of law, assuming you're tied in with that litigation side and all of that. Let's see. Seth asks, could you recommend some tips or literature on spotting fraud, especially when you cannot actually see the person, e.g. email or something like that? I can give you my pointer for email. People that go through, and the best thing that ever happened for email is this spelling and autocorrect and all that. But when people are editing an email, they often will forget after they take out a bunch of words because they go back through it and they try to clean up the wording. They'll forget spacing. They'll forget prepositions. So you can look for something that doesn't fit the rest of the statement. Is much like cadence. If there's gaps in a sentence, it's been edited. So when you're looking at edits, you're looking at an area of concern for people. That's usually what I pay attention to. Or changes in word patterns from long, rambling sentences to short, concise sentences. Because a person has a pattern. I have a very simple pattern, 7-word sentences. Army taught me, and that's the way I function. Scott will tell you, that's the way I talk. Just
the first email I ever got from Greg, there was nothing in the it was only in the subject. I'll call it 12. Nothing nothing written in the email part of it, just that, because I'd written him, make a long story short, I'd sent him an email. I did this TEDx talk called How to Kill Your Body Language Frankenstein and Inspire the Villagers. And before I did it, it was like the day before, and I was like, oh, my Lord, I'm getting ready to do this. And I realized I'd taken that term. Greg talks about a Frankenstein's monster of body language. And so I said, body language Frankenstein. So I said, well, I'm going to I'm going to use that. And so, but I was ripping him off is what I just totally snatched that. But I didn't let him know and didn't say, hey man, is this okay if I do this? So I sent him an email and said, hey, all this stuff and I'm going to get ready to do this and here's what's happening, blah, blah, blah. Big long email. I figured, hey, he'd write back, so, I wish you wouldn't do it. Or here's what's happening. That's wonderful or whatever. Nothing. All I got back was an email. I said, I'll call at 12 tomorrow. Then I left him my number. So give me a call and we'll talk about it. And it just said that in the subject. I was like, oh no, this isn't good. This isn't good at all. And then you called and you were just like this.
Yeah. We're friends. We've been, that was the beginning of a great friendship. Yeah. It's been great. Yeah.
Since what, 2014?
Something. Yeah, it was 14. Yep, for sure. A couple of others I see in here that are pretty good. Sheila asks, can you tell how much grief someone has experienced by looking at how prominent the muscle is? Well, I think the more a person uses it, the more wrinkling and the more you're going to see. That doesn't mean like most people can't voluntarily do that because they've never tried. I will say this, and Scott, you were there. I went through some pretty heavy grieving periods since Scott's known me. One of them was when we were filming some of the actual video that we have in the course, in the body language tactics course. A friend of mine was lying on life support for about 3 weeks. And so he asked me to do it, and I could do it very easily. I think it's easier when you're going through grief, but you can see, it's not as pronounced. It's just easier for me to do than it is for some other people. You can
what do you
see
mean it's not that pronounced? Dude, I've never seen anybody be able to do it like that before on command. I can try. I can do that, but I can't get the whole upside down U thing happening.
Yeah, well, I think that's just something I realized I could do that a long time ago. It's an odd movement, but yeah, when someone's going through grief, it is easier for it to pop up over a little bit of nothing. I do believe that. And you saw that when we were doing the show, Scott.
Yeah.
Bear with me. I'll let you take this one, then I'll jump in on it as well. Fee asks, ever met fake criers? I have. How do they do it? You want to start?
Yeah. Some people can make it happen. Some people really can make it happen. I don't know how they do it. And, Mark Bowden always talks about putting something on your finger so it makes your eyes sting and do that. But I've seen people go hard on being on crying. But the thing is, they snap out of it so quickly. It doesn't last. You don't see the buildup to it. They have the fake buildup, but they don't have the correct move in the chin boss. You don't see much of the grief muscle. But you do see that down here because they know when your side of your mouth comes down because they know that's what it looks like. But some people can just call that stuff right up. Now, having said that, I can do that as well. It takes me a minute to get into it, and I've got a great story that goes with it that I'll tell someday. Not on here. Not yet, anyway. So, and boy, it works like a charm. So, and mine was, I'd had an experience that I had to call on very quickly to make that happen the last time I did it, which was years ago. And, but it can be done and they do it. I don't know if I know actors, what do they call it when they do,
method actors. Yeah.
Method actors. Yep. Yeah. They'll call on something like that. But I had recently had something happen where I could think about that and boom, there it was. There was a bet involved, but I'll tell you about it later on, but I did win the bet. Greg, what have you got?
Yeah, so this is interestingly what started me down the path for body language. I was working at SEER. You guys will always hear me say SEER, which is Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape, where we played enemy interrogators for Green Berets and those kind of guys. And I'd get these guys in who cried all the time. And I remember going and asking the psychologist on staff, hey, how can I tell if this is real or not? Because I was a brand new interrogator. I was in my 20s. Yeah, I'd not thought anything of that. And he said, well, what does it take for you to be sad and to cry? And I said, memory. He said, yeah, well, then what they're doing is that most of them are going to pull up on a memory because they're not actors. They're going to pull up on a memory and they're going to cry about that memory. It's going to bring that emotion to the forefront for them. Now, they may not be crying about it, but it gives them an emotional state. And we can all force ourselves into a more emotional state. I can do it with my face and just push yourself to more emotional. But these guys were bringing whatever the story was that they were using to make them cry. And he said, so how do you think you get rid of it? And I said, I don't know. He said, make them use a different part of their brain and that will go away. Sure enough, I did. I would change topics on them and start hammering them. And then if it was real, come back to it, they would cry again immediately. But if not, it would just dry up. You force them to use that part of the brain. You put enough pressure on them that they get to a point where, no, that's not what's going on. You're asking details about the story they're supposedly crying about, and they're using that part of their brain that is not related to that around, a past experience, loss of loved one, maybe even a pet. So yeah, it's an interesting one in that most people do that to get it there. Sadie asked, and I think we just answered it, how did the two of you meet? You did just answer that, Scott. So that's a good question, Sadie. Fee asked another question I like. Greg, how effective do you think force is during an interrogation? You know, it's interesting. A friend, Lena Cisco, just wrote a book, and she wrote her book about trust in interrogation. And I quite frankly believe that is the tool. Is force powerful? Yeah. I mean, come on. Anybody who's afraid for their life, their fingers, their eyesight is going to be terrified and going to respond to you if you do that. But it's not effective. There's a big difference between effective and efficient, I guess, or even effective and useful. A person's going to say something if they're fearful for their life, but it's not usually going to be true. Remember, I come from an intelligence interrogation background where we are looking for actionable information. Often we may be looking for the friends of the guy we're talking to so that we can neutralize them, whatever that means, whether it's go get them, eliminate them, whatever, to protect other allied forces. So what we're after is facts. We're not after feelings. We're not after any of that. And what we know is that people who trust you, this is all Maslow. You guys hear me overdo Maslow, but this is all Maslow. Once a person trusts you, it's harder to lie to you than it is when they see you as the enemy. So when you make yourself the enemy, then it gets harder. When you get face to face and you're using fear, if fear is your tool, you have moved down the path to where you are becoming a prop for the other interrogator. The other interrogator is going to come in and use trust and say, you know, if you don't answer me, I'm going to have to let Scott come back and talk to you with those hedge clippers. Scott's not effective. Now I'm effective. So you become a prop. And any amount of force, people may believe it works, but somebody's going to say whatever you want to hear to stop it. And there are lots of examples of that throughout the world. After World War II, America moved to this non-coercive interrogation, and it was founded by a guy named Hans Scharf. You'll hear people talk about Scharf, and he used non-coercive, and that became the basis of the school, the whole school that I went through with 14 approaches that's now mandated by Congress as the only usable interrogation techniques after the whole Abu Ghraib and all of those things. Hopefully that helps.
Tell the story about Hans in Disney World.
Oh, yeah. So Hans Scharf is a guy who was a Luftwaffe interrogator in World War II who didn't coerce people. If you go watch the History Channel show, you'll see a lot about him that We Can Make You Talk. And he would actually trust people, have them fly, do all kinds of things, let them tell him anything they wanted. So when he came back, and he was a corporal, if I recall correctly, because he was married to a foreigner, he couldn't be an officer in the German military. And after the war, he came to the U.S. He became kind of the father of our modern interrogation process. But he also was a mosaic artist. So if you've ever been to Disney World and you've been to Cinderella's castle, those are his mosaics. If you've been to LA City Hall, those are his mosaics. Famous for three things, I suppose, but two in life. Okay, Scott, here's a good one for you. Lisa asked, who would play you all in a movie? I've already cast Chase as Simon Pegg, who played Scotty in Star Trek Beyond, but who would you like to play you?
Billy Bob Thornton.
That's who I'd want. I suppose. I have no idea who would play me. Jim Pyle says I'm the Jerry Lee Lewis of interrogation, I guess. So.
Oh man, is he dead yet?
I don't know. I think he's still kicking, as hard as that is to believe. So maybe Dennis Quaid. I don't know.
Wow.
Any updates on Summer?
Bob Thornton.
Jims, any updates on Summer Wells? And will you be doing any more with Dr. Phil? Well, Dr. Phil's a friend. We've had great work with him. Enjoyed it a lot. Scott and I were there in October. There's still a couple of little shows out there that are pending. And Dr. Phil's been fun for us. He's great.
Yeah.
He's very polite, very nice. He's a wonderful guy to us. I actually said to somebody the other day when they were asking me about him, I kind of count him a friend, the way he talks to us, the way he treats us, more of a friend than anything else. And just a great guy to deal with. We probably will do more with him over time as soon as he's ready and he has a place for us. Summer Wells, what we know is what you know. We don't get anything you don't get. We know that this week there have been a couple of YouTubers in there doing some stuff in and around the Wells family, and there's been a whole bunch of stuff out on YouTube if you go look at that, including the police getting involved, and they're also subpoenaing some information from local cameras. So hopefully they'll find some. Or, one of the things that, Scott, I think we ought to do is let's try to help push that reward fund up a little bit. Go poke on that. Let's find out who owns it first, but let's try to help, because, it's a shame that little girl's missing still.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, Scott, that I forgot?
No, Dr. Phil's really cool, though. He's been so good to us. So good to us.
Yeah. Fun guy too, actually. He's funny as hell. That's
the thing. He's funny. You see that funny on TV funny, but one-on-one, now I've hung out with a lot of funny people. Shoot, I've done I've produced a lot of comedy records, believe it or not, like with really big comedians, and he's funny. That's it. Dr. Phil's a funny guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he is funny. He just, impromptu in the moment.
Yeah.
And I can't help but love another car guy. So.
Yeah, no kidding. Good Lord. Yeah, they would talk. I don't know what the hell they're talking about half the time.
Mark asks, hey, Greg and Scott, is it unlikely to study human behavior in the wild with you two? Meaning, I guess, would we ever get to a point where you get to come and talk to us and learn about people? Yeah, I think the four of us probably, there'll come a time where we all are together, and we will announce that as quickly as we have some final details. How's that?
Yeah. Nicely put.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, Maria, I'm flattered. Maria says Bruce Willis or Ed Harris could play Greg in a movie. I've been out of commission for a while and missed lots. Can you tell me the name of the Dr. Phil episode you two did besides Summer Wells one? We did.
What if we should say anything about that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Well, too late. We did say it. You can take it out.
Okay,
but there's also, we did the things that we've done with him that were really good. We had a great time. He had a young woman who had been convicted and had been in jail for 19 years, if I remember.
Oh, yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And she was released, and she's trying to get exonerated. The Innocence Project's working with her. We said, hey, guys, we believe her. Anything we can do to help.
Yeah.
We were actually there for that. We did a couple of others, little pieces, not just Summer Wells. We were on a couple of other shows with him where we weighed in on what we saw and those kinds of things. So, just if we'll try to find some links and post them so you can go find that. And we were representing the behavior panel. The behavior panel, two of us could make it, the rest couldn't. We say when we go in that way, we're not Scott and Greg, we're the behavior panel. We are there for the behavior panel, and we've all had that opportunity to be able to get in front of it. Good question, Maria. Sadie says, are you super aware of your own personal body language signals? Scott, you want to speak to that one? And then I'll do my part.
Not really. I mean, you try to when you go in somewhere. If you're going to talk to someone who's done something maybe they shouldn't have done, or you're trying to find out, of course, you're paying attention to all of it because you have to present yourself as a specific this or that. Same thing when you're going in for a job interview. You want to present yourself as a specific this or that. But after a while, that wears off. And if you'll watch Greg and I on that, speaking of Summer Wells, when we were talking to Dawn Wells, watch that. You'll see us go from we'll sort of we talked to him for a little while before that, so we should be sure we got a pretty good baseline on him, just shooting the breeze. But then when we get in there and put on the okay, we're going to talk to you because you might be in trouble thing, you'll see that sort of fade a little bit, and we get looser as we go along. And there are a couple things that I forget about in there as well, and which everybody does to pay attention to. I'll tell you a good example on Dr. Phil was when we're always like, oh, when you do the steepling, it means this or that. And I always say it's okay to steeple because you want to look like the person in charge. But I started doing it so it was coming down like this. So I was standing there like that, where the steepling part was going down, because I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about whatever he was telling me. But I was trying to keep my hands together so I wouldn't look goofy, just stand there with my, like I was standing straight up or something. So I had them together. But those just kind of boom, went down like that. So I personally forget about stuff as I go along. Greg, what about you?
Yeah, I think I try to always be the same person. I talk with my hands a lot. I'm the most hand-talking Germanic guy ever. My ancestors are all English, Scottish, and Irish. And so all that hand movement is not typical of my people, but I fit right in with the people I hang out with. So my wife talks with her hands. My mother-in-law just passed last week, and she talked with her hands. it's cultural, it's Mediterranean culture and that kind of thing. And it fits for me. I think it's great that when Karen Rolfe did us, she had my hand movement down pat because I move my hands a lot when I talk. I'm an illustrator. It's just the way I'm wired. So I'm always trying to do that. Yeah. Boom, 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 make points. I'm always illustrating with my hands. And part of that comes from standing in front of people my entire life since I was 18. So I think getting your point across, you get comfortable with what is normal, normal for you. And if you go out of that, then you get really conscious of your body language. So for example, if I had my hands tied, I would be
You wouldn't be able to speak.
No, I wouldn't. I'd be very uncomfortable because I like to use my hands to make my point.
Yeah, if you ever capture Greg for some reason, you don't want him to talk, don't gag him, just tie his hands up and he won't be able to talk.
But yeah, so I think it depends on you and where you are and how you're wired as to exactly which body language matters. In terms of my face, I use my face as much as I use my hands, and I'm conscious of it. If you go back and watch the Don Wells thing, that, as Scott said, you'll see me using my face a lot as I'm trying to make connection with him, and I'm watching him, and the minute he makes connection, I change my facial expressions in that. So yes, we're conscious. Are we nervous about it? Usually not, because we realize that most people can't read what we can, so we wouldn't be conscious of it. Only crossing our arms, to Scott's point, the steepling thing, those kinds of things matter. Scott, I'll tell you how to know what to do with your hands.
What?
Just let somebody strip search you. You got to know where to put them. So.
Go on. Well, you had more experience with that than I had.
Yeah. Fortunately or unfortunately, whatever you want to call it.
So join Body Language Membership. I'll talk about that. So if you're on YouTube, you're watching Body Language Membership live Q&A. And if you want to join, go to bodylanguagemembership.com and that'll explain everything to you. You'll see what all we're doing there.
Yeah, and we have a lot of courses in Body Language Membership, but also a lot in Body Language Tactics. We have the True Crime Workshop out there you can go look at, and that's specifically, if you're a big fan of true crime and you're listening in, that's a good one for you to be able to go and figure out exactly what's going on in those shows, how they're structured and that kind of thing. I'm looking to see. Okay, this is a good one. Sonny asked, guys, I can't for the life of me retain a label. I think what you mean by that is whatever we call this body language. I can see something and I can feel what I see or might be seeing, but I can't label it. I'll watch something and I'll see something, but I don't know how to put it into words. Maybe I'm not understanding anything. I can't voice what I see, so I must not understand what I'm seeing, but I feel like I do. Ugh. So here's the interesting piece. The only reason all of this matters, the only reason we have all these words is so that we can put words to it, because all of us instinctively can see a lot of this stuff. But us putting words to it gives us a way to talk about it, if that makes sense to you. And I always said to people, that's the complex piece. If you want to call it whatever, I'll tell you that there are pieces that I call something because I've been calling it 20 years that other people may call it something else. I refer to gestures and it makes it easy to remember. I refer to gestures as things you do with your hands that other people will call emblems. And that's okay. If you want to call it whatever, but you get your head around it, and then you can, when you want to talk to somebody, you have to use a different language. That's okay. I say the easiest way to do that is to pick a topic. I'm going to look at illustrators. And for 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, whatever amount of time it takes you, I'm going to go and categorize every illustrator I see. Every one, so that it always pops in my head when I see that it's an illustrator. And you compound on that like an onion or like a pearl, and you just keep building. I think it's the easiest way. Scott, you have a suggestion?
Yeah. And since you realize you're noticing these things, that's good because your brain is turned on and you're observing. So that's the key. The whole thing is observing and then trying to decide if this person is comfortable or uncomfortable and what are the differences there, and you go from there. But once you start realizing there's something going on, you start seeing these things that are happening in the face and the mouth and the head and the shoulders and the hands, then you realize if you realize you're seeing things, now all you got to do is read. I always hate to say go back to reading, but that's where everything is. You can go, in other words, as corny as it sounds, you can sit down with Joe Navarro. You can sit down with Paul Ekman and it's like they're telling you all this. It's like them talking to you. If you say, I'd love to, anybody in the world, I'd like to go talk to Paul Ekman, well, do it. All you got to do reading is like listening to that person talk and them showing you stuff. If you look at it like that, you go, holy smokes, that might be the nerdiest thing I've ever said in my life. I better shut that down.
No, but it's true. It's when you're reading other people's thoughts, you're getting exactly that. Now, you may not get face-to-face with them ever, but that's okay. On that note, somebody asked a great question. We ever consider bringing, and I'll read it, but, oh, yeah. Brian asked, do you have plans of bringing a Godfather on to join the panel? If not, what are the chances? It would be interesting, I'm sure. He also has a great sense of humor. Well, Scott's pretty closely connected to Joe, and we've considered having him on the show. It's just finding the right timing for him and the right topic. But, yeah, we'd love to have Joe.
Yeah, he's great,
Scott,
man.
you can talk to him. Thank you, Fatima. Let's see. What else is here? Lisa asked a question. Scott, I'm going to give you this one and then I'll weigh in, but serious question this time. As a sexual abuse survivor or assault survivor on 2 separate occasions, I feel that my default body language makes me feel like I appear very victim-like in social situations. Have you any tips to help me look less weak or vulnerable? Thoughts?
It's since I can't get a look at you and don't know what you're doing, it's tough to tell you. But as long as you keep, it sounds so, like what their mother or father would say, but keep your head up. It sounds weird. Keep your chin up and look around and try to be still. Don't be, I'm a big mover. I move around everywhere and Greg sits like this for hours and I can't help it. But the more you're still and the more calm you look, the more in control you look of yourself. I'm not saying I'm not in control of myself. I'm just a big mover, I guess. So it's tough because when something like that happens, you think about it it's just in there all the time. Having dealt with those situations a lot, that's the recurring thing you get, or theme of it, is it's in there just running all the time, and that's what you think of. And then you see people looking at you, you think, oh, this is that, and I'm this. But try to be still and try to keep your head up and look around. If people are looking at you, look at them and sort of acknowledge it. It's tough to say, how do I look confident? But that's how you do it. You sit up straight and you keep your head up and don't slouch and don't do this a lot. What I'm telling you is pay attention to everything you're doing. But after a while, it'll become rote for you. You'll be able to do that without even thinking about it. You'll just become that person when you're out somewhere. Hope that helps.
Yeah, I think if you take what nature does for just a minute, and I'm around animals all the time, so I pay attention to them. Birds, if you look at birds, they're constantly looking around because they're low on the food chain. So they're constantly nervous and looking around like, oh, I better run. They're like mice in the air. Everything else is after them. The reason they don't land and all that kind of thing. Or they're paying attention up, even where I live, because of hawks, falcons. But if you notice a lion don't do a whole bunch of looking around until they're ready to eat. They're just paying attention to their own thing, doing their own thing. And I think there's a kind of an allegory there for human beings. People who look around nervously and break eye contact are perceived, doesn't mean they're weak, but are perceived by those predatorial kind of folks as weaker, more prey-like, and that kind of thing. And, we are designed to read body language. Whether we're using it for good or evil is a different story. So I just say pay attention to that. If you find yourself jerky and looking around and looking like you're afraid, people perceive that fear. And I know it's tough. I wish we had a better, easier answer for you without looking at you. That's the best we can probably do. And Lisa, I'm sorry for your past experience. Let's see. Okay. Jim's has a great one. What's the strangest body language you have seen? I'll go right off the bat, and then you get to do your eyebrow guy, Scott. I think is probably my favorite one.
Okay.
I worked with a guy in construction management. When I first left the Army, before I came back to doing body language, I worked with a construction manager who was the oddest man I've ever known. He would, first of all, if you're a construction manager, it's a stressful job. It's constant. Buildings grow whether you do your job or not, and you get covered up. And so he was there, and he would get these calls. And in the office, I would hear, Mark, pick up the phone. His phone would ring 50 times, and then you'd have to go, you'd hear the overhead say, Mark, pick up the phone. His voicemail box was always full of people screaming at him. And oddly enough, I think he had Asperger's, but he would sit across the table from you, and when he was stressed, he had a cheesy mustache, and he would pet it. And the more stressed he would get, and then he would turn and look at you and go, it was the strangest
I'm grabbing
thing I've
that
ever
as a
seen.
loop.
I know. I got it. It's perfect. But the strangest thing about this guy was, I remember I said, "Hey, man, do you have a gun?" And he said, "Yeah, I got a shotgun." I said, "Can I buy it?" Because I didn't want to be in the office with that guy with a gun.
Jeez.
Just an odd guy. It was the oddest body language. Later, the guy went to jail for some unspeakable things, but that's life. You want to talk about your weirdest body language?
Yeah, and these actually deal with the eyebrows. So one guy, when I was at the Entrepreneur Center in Nashville, I was the entrepreneur in residence, and I would train these new entrepreneurs. Is this the one you're talking about, Greg? Or the guy on the plane?
The video.
Okay.
Yep, the video. Yep.
And, so I'll train them how to pitch their concept, their idea, their whatever it is they're pitching. Had a couple of people on Shark Tank, 3 actually. So what I would do is this, and I would say, "Okay, man, let's get up here and rehearse this." And the guy would rehearse his pitch, and everything was fine. But when he went to the big pitch, as he was talking, when people use illustrators and they're emphasizing specific words and phrases, this guy was doing it with his eyebrows, and he would do this every time he was talking about something that was important, and it was so freaky. And I looked around, everybody was like, they were like zoned in on him, but he was like talking about Charlie Brown's teacher. It was like, wah, 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 because he was just going and this. And so what I would tell you, and it would go around everywhere. So I like clip it out and send it to Greg. I'm like, "Dude, look at this." And come to find out, this guy had grown up in a really strict household. His father was a military person and was really strict with his brothers and sisters. And instead of using illustrators, he would make them stand really straight when they were talking. That's where his illustrators went to, were his forehead, were his eyebrows. And it was the weird. I'm going to talk to him and see if I can post that on. If I can post that,
it's a great video. It's a great video.
It's pretty weird. And then there was a guy in a plane. We were coming back from Los Angeles, and I was sitting with this person who's really famous, and they're trying to be cool and quiet, but it was really rough. It was really, really bad weather, so it was really bumpy. This person's getting all nervous, and he just happens to turn around, and he turns back and he does that. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Dude, look behind us." There's a guy back there, and he had one eyebrow going. He had 2 eyebrows, but he just kept doing this the whole time. He was just messing with his eyebrow the whole time. And the rougher it got, the more he'd mess with it. It's like your mustache guy. And so the more he was doing it, the more he would do that. It was the weirdest thing, man, to see. And then I couldn't quit looking at him. Then I turned around, I was like staring at him. He was like, "What?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm just seeing if everything's good." It totally wigged me out.
Well, this guy, when he would do this thing, he would talk to himself and he'd go, "Stress, stress," and name the job, and then go, "Stress, stress." Okay, let's see, a couple of others, and then, yeah, Sadie, we will all nerd out on interrogation videos soon. I'll pick a couple of those. We've got so many right now. There's a couple of really good missing people cases and those kinds of things, and we're probably hitting those next. We got a couple of other interesting ones. The world's turning around us, so
we've been getting a lot of that. Britney Spears' sister, what's her name?
Oh yeah. Well,
did you see Jamie, this video?
Jamie. Yeah. Well, the Britney Spears one, I can't wait till she does an interview. That is going to be a fun one.
Man, I've been watching her Instagram. I can't hardly stand it. It makes me feel uncomfortable. All she does is she puts on a song and then she does all this and then she starts spinning around.
Yeah.
It's freaking me out.
So Jenna asked, "Greg, did you create the gesture used on the behavior panel, fingers interwoven facing your chest?" All I'm doing there, Jenna, is illustrating what I'm talking about, how things go together, where there's a barrier or whatever it is. So yeah, that's all I'm doing. Let's see. 2 questions, Scott and Greg. This is from Charity. Jerry Lee Lewis died a while ago. He used to stay at the Beverly Hills Hotel in his favorite bungalow. Lewis was totally paranoid dude who carried a lot of hardcore weapons in his bodyguard's SUV. Well, I understand that. If I were paranoid, I might do the same thing. Question 1, just came across a stand-up comedy of James Gaffigan on YouTube. It's fascinating to watch power pauses and vocal variety and intonation. Who are some of your favorite living comics? Scott knows quite a few of them, so I'm going to let him talk to that one. Who come close to body language or storytelling mastery, and then I got a couple there. That's question 1. Let's hit that one, and then we'll go to the next one.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, Jim Gaffigan, James Gaffigan. Yep. That's hilarious. Somebody I really like, we should probably talk to, is Kyle Dunnigan. He's the guy that does he puts on the, what do you call it when you put those face things on you on Instagram and does those, but he does these things live. Yeah. Good Lord, it's hilarious. But the thing is, and having hung out with him on there a lot, he goes from being this one guy. As soon as he puts those faces on, he changes. He just disappears into it. Like he'll do stuff with his face and do characters, but just use his face. And this guy disappears into that, and you can't see him in there. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Where you see him do this, not just putting the face over stuff on, but when there's a couple of them that he does without that, and then he disappears. It's the freakiest thing. And having worked with a lot of comedians, Jeff Foxworthy's great because I did a lot of Jeff stuff. I did all of his music stuff. You Might Be a Redneck If and all that stuff. Wrote all that and then produced it. And his thing was, if you go to a show, it wasn't the very same body language every night, but it was really, really close because once you get into that space where you're trying to be funny and you see what works when you do stuff, and you look at the pauses and the thoughts and the moves you'll make that are small, then you got to remember those and you use those as you go along. So every comedian has their own thing, and that's why I like him. Some comedians like Big J. Okerson, he's one of my favorites, is he sits on a chair, he sits on a stool and talks, but he's a storyteller, but it's the funniest thing in the world. It's a little racy on the language. It's a little this language is foul, but he's still hilarious. Great storyteller, but the body language he uses just sitting on a stool is unbelievable how he can control a crowd. And what they're doing as they tell a story, they control the crowd with how they look, with their body language. You see some people march back and forth. Yep. And that's one thing. But when you can stand there and you do that and you can, and then move to somewhere else, it's that controlling them. You want them to live what you're going through vicariously through you, in other words, as you tell that story most of the time, as you tell something that happened to you. So you've got to show those reactions and stuff. And some of the best people in the world for body language are comedians. A lot of times they'll have a mic and they'll have just the one hand to do it with, but still they're fantastic. So I like Jeff Foxworthy's great. Kyle Dunnigan is great. There are so many great. Big J. Okerson, Dan Soder, Kurt Metzger, all those guys are hilarious,
Well, most of mine are a little on the rough side, so I'll leave it at that. But yeah. Like Craig Shoemaker's funny, a couple others in that, I like those guys. But yeah, guys, the big thing for me is comedy is timing. When I did theater, I knew guys who were comedy guys, and they were such sticklers for detail. And if you go read people talk about Lucille Ball, boom, she was just a stickler for time because everybody around them can screw up their timing. So people who are acting in front of camera, your brother does. So people who are acting in front of a camera have to rely on their coworkers not to screw up their timing. And timing is everything in comedy. It's funny.
I tell you who to watch, and he's clean too, is Nate Bargatze. That guy, not only is he funny, man, his body language, there's one picture of him where he's sitting, I think it's on a talk show. And this is the most relaxed, most in charge, confident looking person I've ever seen sit down, from presidents to anybody else. There's this one picture of Nate Bargatze sitting in this chair and he's doing everything right. And I don't even think he's trying to. He's just that confident without being, I can't cuss on here, but without being a goof. I don't know, what about it. Really good at it.
I think if you really want to go watch masterful timing is Andy Kaufman. I mean, gone long, but man, what timing that guy had in terms of weird body language and characters and all that stuff. Just kind of crazy. And you either like or don't like him, I guess. Yeah. Mary asked a good question. Is it possible for someone to believe their own lies? Oh, yeah.
Shoot,
we run into a lot of people who believe their own lies. And the problem, you can believe all the lie you want, but if you don't have all the supporting details, let's take it as a lie of omission. If you haven't thought of the forward and backward pass about timing and how it all goes together, it falls apart. If you have created a lie of commission, one where you make up everything from plain cloth, and your whole photo album of your life doesn't support it, like if I said I was Miss America once, that sure as hell ain't going to work. So that kind of made up stuff is hard to support as well. So you got lies of commission, lies of omission, then you got transference and embellishment. Transference, I take your life and turn it into mine, a little harder, and I can believe that. Or embellishment, where I make the fish this big. Those are harder to take apart, but all of them have supporting stories and language that you can identify. And we cover some of those, I think, in the course. If we don't, Scott, let's put that up. Let's talk about language and lies. Scott, how much time do you have left?
We got about 2 minutes.
Okay.
No, 1 minute.
So let's look and see if we got a couple left, and if we do, we'll hit them. If we don't, we'll go there. This is funny. I'll leave it with this one. This is just funny, and we'll go from there. Sonny says, I met my husband in Southeast Kentucky. He was a fine Yankee, as my mama called him. I swear to God, he told me that when he first moved to Kentucky, he watched the Blue Collar Comedy Tour before our first date. I was offended and amused.
Wow. Those guys are all funny.
Great close to the show for today, or to the Q&A for today, guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this Body Language membership. We've got a lot of stuff coming for you. The new year is going to bring some new things. We're going to bring a current criminal investigator in to talk to him. We're going to bring in one of the best interrogators I've ever known to talk to her, who is now tied tightly to Veterans Affairs and tightly tied to leadership in that area. I think you'll enjoy meeting her. She's a rock star in the interrogation world. I think you'll enjoy meeting her. We'll bring some of Scott's friends in this year to talk to people who are not interrogators, but who've been tied up in entertainment and that kind of thing. And we'll add some more classes. Like I said, I've been working on this energy, direction, and focus. We'll also put some things in there around lies. Scott, you want to add something? And if you're outside, if you're at YouTube, come join us. We're having a hell of a good time in here, and you can see lots of good questions. People have generated their own things, and we will put up a UFO quick snippet for us all to discuss in the community in the next week.
And maybe then after that, let's do a Bigfoot one, because I know you always want to do Bigfoot.
I love Bigfoot.
Okay. All right, then thank you all for watching this, and go to bodylanguagemembership.com if you want to join in and ask your questions and get them answered and be part of the membership. It's like Facebook with no commercials or ads. So there you have it. All right.
Thank you.
Well, all right, Greg. Thanks so much, man. I'll see you guys in a bit.